p.m. We'll begin. Good evening and welcome to the Federal Monitor's Town Hall, focusing on lead and mold this evening. Thank you so much, Ms. Edna Handy, for putting this evening together. And we would like to introduce you to the Monitor's team lead on lead and mold, Dennis Walsh, who will be giving a presentation this evening, joined by two senior members at Nycha who are dedicated to lead and mold issues, Dan Green and Elena Techikova. They will be giving a panel style presentation in a few moments. So the way this evening will work, we will hear opening remarks from Dennis, then he will turn it over to our panelists, then he will do some moderated questions and answers, and then we will open the session up to the floor. We really want most of the time to be spent answering your questions and focusing on the issues related to lead and mold that are of most concern to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a pretty full Zoom room this evening, and thank you to the Nycha Resident Association presidents who we sent emails to for spreading the word and for joining us. And thank you for your continued leadership and that of your board. We're really grateful to all of you and your hard work. And we thank you for your continued interest in the work that the Monitor team is doing. And with that, we would like to welcome all of our panelists and thank you. I'll remind everyone that we do have a Spanish language interpreter. So please use her special Zoom room if that's something that you would like for the evening. And we'd also like to ask that everyone please line up in our chat room. If you have any questions or comments, we're going to save that till after the presentations, which should be about 30 to 40 minutes. And then we'll have the balance of our 90 minutes together to focus on your questions. So as things come up, put them in the chat and we will answer them in the order that they were received. Please indicate whether you would like to ask your question personally or if you would like one of our moderators to read your question. And if you can also please put in the chat which development you're from as you're raising your question. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Mr. Walsh to kick us off.
Well, thank you, Asha, and welcome everyone to this particular town hall, which has a special interest to me. I am the Monitor's workstream lead for lead, mold, and leaks. Little background about me: I'm a litigation attorney and former prosecutor by experience and training. I was also the federal monitor for the District Council of Carpenters from 2010 through 2014. And I've worked on previous monitorships with federal monitor Bart Schwartz. These experiences have taught me how to learn quickly and deeply about the matters for which I was responsible. And suffice to say, I have learned an awful lot about lead and mold in the last 3 years. We have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm grateful, truly grateful, to have with us tonight a couple of very talented and knowledgeable experts from Nycha, Elena Techikova and Dan Green. And I'm sure that those of you who are registered have some great questions which you'll want to pose. So let's get started with some preliminaries. First, about mold. Now, I think everybody knows that mold spores are basically everywhere, indeed in the very air we breathe. These spores have very basic needs: a steady source of water and food and low airflow. When they find the right conditions, they make themselves right at home. For the typical bathroom mold colony, there's nothing like an ample supply of food, a clogged vent or a closed window, a nearby leak, and of course, people taking long hot showers. But mold isn't just nasty. It brings serious health risks to people, particularly those with underlying respiratory issues, such as asthma. Now, everyone knows that mold has been a long-term challenge for Nycha. The federal class action case known as the Baez case was filed in the Southern District of New York back in 2013. Nycha is currently subject to a revised consent decree in that case, which was agreed upon in 2018 by Nycha and the plaintiffs and approved by the late senior district court judge, William Pauley. In 2019, Nycha and the City of New York entered into an agreement with the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development and the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York to settle a federal lawsuit alleging multiple violations of federal law and regulations, including in the categories of mold and our other subject tonight, lead-based paint. The terms of the settlement are set forth in what is generally referred to as the HUD agreement. Tonight, we'll discuss what Nycha must do and is indeed doing about mold and leaks and lead, whether driven by the HUD agreement or, in the case of mold and leaks, the Baez case, or Nycha's mold and leak action plan, which was approved by the monitor in March of last year. And to this end, we're very pleased to have Elena Tenchikova, who leads Nycha's Office of Mold Assessment and Remediation, which is an integral player in this effort. And with regard to lead as a preliminary, lead is a natural substance. It's actually number 82 on the table of elements with the symbol PB. It was used in various manufacturing techniques by civilizations for many centuries, and in the early modern era is an additive in paints and gasoline, not to mention its use in ammunition and radiation shields. However, by the 20th century, lead was recognized as a neurotoxin that accumulates in soft tissues and bones. It damages the nervous system and interferes with the function of biological enzymes, causing neurological disorders such as brain damage and behavioral problems. For young children, exposure to lead is potentially disastrous. Lead also affects general health, cardiovascular, and renal systems. Some even theorize that Ludwig van Beethoven's loss of hearing was caused by lead ingested through cheap wine containers. By 1960, New York City recognized that lead-based paint was harming young children, and it was in the forefront of jurisdictions banning its use. By 1978, the use of lead paint was broadly discontinued. Federal and local laws and regulations strictly regulate how lead paint must be treated. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, has detailed regulations governing the inspection, maintenance, and removal of lead paint, and strict requirements for lead safety practices, record keeping, and resident notices in public housing. New York City has very tough lead rules, and the new standard for what constitutes lead-based paint in housing occupied by children under 6 is now 0.5, or will soon be 0.5 milligrams per centimeter squared. The former standard was 1.0 milligram per centimeter squared. And Nycha must abide by the strict new standard set by the City of New York. In addition to the laws and regulations, Nycha must abide by the commitments it made in the HUD agreement, which contains an 8-page single-spaced exhibit detailing what Nycha must do regarding lead-based paint, and the lead action plan, which was approved by Bart Schwartz in January of this year. We will discuss many of these obligations and related challenges this evening. To this end, we'll be assisted by Nycha's very knowledgeable Chief Compliance Officer, Dan Green. But before we go to lead, we are going to start with mold. And I'm going to turn it over to Elena, who has prepared some slides for the discussion. And we won't take more than 10 or 15 minutes now, but I think this is a very important preliminary discussion so that everybody understands how rigorous the mold procedure is and how inclusive the mold action plan is and what's actually being done to combat mold and leaks at Nycha. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Nycha's Elena Tenchikova.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you everybody for being on and expressing your interest in mold area. This is truly an important topic, and I could talk for hours on this, but I'll try to be mindful of time. So with that, let me kick it off with opening. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. with why we're here. And our mission, Nycha's mission, is to provide quality housing for New Yorkers that is sustainable, inclusive, and safe while fostering opportunities in economic mobility. Office of Mold Assessment focuses specifically as part of the larger umbrella of supporting that mission to provide residents with a healthy and safe homes that they deserve, you deserve, and encompass a mold and leak-free living environment. It is our sole responsibility to think about leaks and mold full-time with my team and the extensive team that works hard to make sure to bring a healthy indoor environment, which of course starts with a mold-free environment. We could go to the next slide. As we know, Nycha is a city of its own, and we have about 10,000 employees that are here to support our residents and our operation. When it comes down to the operational response to mold and leaks, I would say about 95% of it actually comes from the operations department, which consists of property management staff and borough staff. What does that mean? That means at developments, we have property managers, property maintenance supervisors, assistant property maintenance supervisors that lead their team in order to respond to immediate and proactive response, as well as reactive response when it comes down to leaks and mold. We also have skilled trades that live under borough operation. So that means that's your planners who are working to schedule carpenters, painters, plumbers, in order to come and provide a response. A lot of times what will happen is on the immediate, when it comes down to the mold, the most common people that you will see performing the inspections will probably be your property maintenance supervisor and your assistant supervisor. They then will identify what the condition is and then come up with a remediation plan. And a lot of times, if it's a small repair, something that they could do in one visit, that will be done on the development level. But more often than not, what we see is it's done on a complex level, which means a lot of times we need to do the wall break. After the wall break, we need to repair the pipe. After the pipe, we need to repair the wall. After the wall, we need to paint it. So it comes up into many sequencing steps that take in order to complete from beginning to end. And it does involve a lot of entities in order to get that done. We also have my team that consists of 3 areas. We have the contract management unit. This contract management unit consists of approximately 20 people and clean vents staff, which is shortly of 20 people as well that I'll talk in a little bit. And our goal is to manage multi-million-dollar contracts that we have. We have a ventilation branch, and then we also have complex repairs branch where we come in and we manage mold assessment contracts as well as remediation contracts. We also respond to very complex leak cases. A lot of the times, while the number of cases that we deal with is small, those cases tend to be multi-month, very complex, a lot of times involving relocation and gut rehab. We also have mold response unit. Our mold response unit consists of staff that is here to support unresolved complaints. We are an extension of the independent court-appointed Ombudsperson call center, OCC, that it exists in order to resolve unresolved complaints that are aging and to make sure that whatever went off the road get back and we case manage with our resident communication associates from once we get the case, working with the property management, the other stakeholders involved, as well as the OCC through completion of the case until we get the resident satisfaction. And then we have the analytics and process change unit. What the goal of that team is to look at our very complicated data, digest that data, inform strategic decisions to our leadership team, analyze trends, and we really focus on learning from the various feedback that we get, as well as observations from unresolved complaints on how we could improve the process. And that's an ongoing and evolving process. This is not something that we look at once we finish a standard procedure that it's done. This is something that we work on consistently evolving and understanding and further improving the process. Again, property management and operations represent probably 95% of the immediate response, and that's who you would be seeing when folks come out to look at mold and leak complaints. And we really come in unique circumstances where it gets complicated, complex, and needs that extra attention. We, of course, have really critical partners, our oversight entities, compliance department, and environmental health and safety. I will let Dan speak about it in just a minute. And to the right, what you'll notice is other departments. So whenever we talk about fixing something, whether it's small or big, it relies on all of the supporting departments in order to participate. So for example, if we have a glitch on something in our system, our inspection is not working correctly, that means we need the IT team in order to come in and to work on developing the business requirements and logic in order to build it out. We have also a performance tracking and analytics department, of course, our community engagement and partnership that promotes and make sure that we do proactive outreach to residents about mold and leaks. And I'll talk more a little bit about our campaign. Of course, our legal team, strategic innovation, procurement when we're securing and executing contracts, capital, who of course does the major renovations that are so needed to our system, and et cetera. So with that, Dan, if you could speak a little bit about your department and your role, I'll pause here.
Yeah, and I'll be very quick. Hopefully everybody can see me. Hi everyone, my name is Dan Green. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer. And we do a lot of stuff with the around mold and leaks, but the biggest thing that I want to stress is accountability. Our staff has to follow the mold standard procedure. Simple as that. And part of the role of compliance in EHS, which is a lot of what my office has been doing for the past year especially, is to make sure that employees are held accountable. And what does that mean? Like accountable, does that mean they have to get fired? No. This stuff is complicated. And what we need to do is, number one, give them better person-to-person training, technical assistance. So if somebody messes up, if they don't do their work order properly, if they don't upload the right picture, minor issue, we'll make sure that we sit down with that person, what we call a huddle, to give them technical assistance and let them know what they should do better next time. Then we have some cases where a little bit more significant, where they missed a wet reading or they didn't follow the proper process, and that resulted in some harm to the resident. In those cases, they're going to get written up, and we make sure that we establish a standard, so we're not just writing people up with useless information, but we want to tell them how they need to improve their process, and we want to track it. Then we have cases where they don't follow the SP at all, and where we think it's very concerning. And they're a small number, a small group, but we want to make sure that if you don't put the right information in Maximo intentionally, where you cut corners, that's not going to be tolerated anymore. And I know I'm not trying to talk tough or anything like that. And we got a long way to go because we're a new office here, so we have a lot to do. And we work with Dennis's team very carefully, who sends us a lot of cases to review and take action on. But we need to make sure that our employees follow this, because we don't want to waste all this money and all this effort and all this time coming up with these procedures and then just treat them like they don't exist. That's not how we want to do things anymore. We need to enforce them, and our employees will get better. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen in a day or a week or even a year, but that's what we have to start moving towards, both on mold, and we'll also talk about it on lead. But I'll pause now, but that's just the one point I want to make about the role of compliance here as it relates to mold.
Thank you. And echoing what Dan said, compliance department absolutely serves as the enforcer of the mold standard procedure and our procedures. They are also I think, a think tank and a support on developing new procedures as we develop them, so that way they are work and operational. And they, along with EHS, provide on-site supervision and quality assurance visits, which then inform decisions. For example, we are currently doing a few pilots, and part of the criteria is to have compliance and environmental health and safety come out and make sure that what we're trying to accomplish with the pilot is happening, and observe, take it back, and see what further refinement is needed. So thank you for that. We could go to the next slide. Yeah, great. So one of the very important programs that we've been working on that hasn't been easy and takes a lot of steps in order to complete, but has a significant impact on the air quality in the home and to create an environmental healthy and a mold-free environment is our ventilation program. I'm really proud of this. We kicked off this effort in May 2020, and we kicked this off right in the middle of the heart of the pandemic. But we powered through and we kept going, and we really embraced the fact that this is a priority and it needs to be done. So we started, this program has two components. It has the roof fan component, which you could see on the top right corner. Those roof fans, the way that they work is they exhaust from the inside of the apartment up into the outside exterior. And that's important because the reason why they exist is in places like most commonly bathroom and in kitchen, sometimes in order to get that ventilation out. You would find that in circumstances where you don't have windows, that's the best way to describe it. So if you don't have a window in your bathroom or kitchen, then you would have a roof fan that is supporting it. What you would see is a vent in that room, which is, if you look on the bottom right picture, that demonstrates one of our internal Nycha residents, team members, our technician cleaning the vent. And that's important because a lot of times what had happened over the years, we have dust debris that got collected and built up, and it prevents for roof fan to be operating. So we started off with just installing oversized roof fans intentionally while we had the vent component suspended due to the pandemic and social distancing requirements. And then we phased in the second component starting in December. I am so happy to report that we've installed 4,317 roof fans and retained 2,166, bringing us to 74% of the roof fan of OMARS, what we're responsible for completing that goal.
And let me jump in, Elena, because the ones that have been retained have been thoroughly inspected by engineers. And so they are fit for purpose. They're ready to go. And I should also point out that this is one of the top commitments that Nycha has made in the mold action plan that was approved by Bart Schwartz just a few days, I think, before kind of the official start of the pandemic. And Nycha has also had to deal with the challenge of asbestos coated material on the curbs, the base of the fans, which has added effort, a significant effort and expense to the project. So at this point, you know, the exterior work has, in our view, really been well done. And I think Nycha is very fairly to be commended for the diligence that they've shown on this key piece of the mold action plan. You know, I wanted to ask you, Elena, much of the mold standard procedure, if not all of it, was driven by the Baez case. What are some of the things that Nycha must deal with as a result of the Baez case? And many of those provisions were actually mirrored in the HUD agreement, such as the complex repair rule, as some of us call it. But why don't you just quickly run over how the HUD agreement and the Baez consent decree coexist?
Yeah, sure. Baez has very specific requirements. Top line ones is making sure that the inspection happens within 4 days, that a simple repair is done within 7 days, and complex repair completed in 15 days. We're also required to inspect our roof fans on a monthly basis and make sure that they're operable. If they're not operable, then we have 21 days in order to replace them. What was one of the reasons why we took this proactive initiative in order to replace and upgrade our systems. The HUD agreement really encompassed a lot of what the Baez case required on those specific deliverables on how our response is, the quality of it, as well as the time frame associated with it. One of them, I would say, the most important things that when I look at the process change of before Baez and the mold busters process and after, is it has the inspection that requires not only just a visual inspection, but to utilize tools in order to inform the condition, such as moisture meter, anemometer, etc. That's an important change. That means that the underlying conditions are then identified where sometimes where the eyes cannot see. Then the remediation, of course, how long it takes in order to complete it. And the requirement is in order to complete all of the associated repairs as well. So that's why one of the reasons when we structured our the way that our mold work orders work is we have to make sure that they're completed from beginning and end, and they're tied to the parent. And one of the things that ensures the quality of the repairs done, which is of course at the forefront on making sure that the root cause is addressed and the issue won't reoccur, is we have a built-in quality assurance that is generated after the last child or the last piece of the work is completed. And in the case where it is not completed, in the case deficiencies are found, it restarts, and we will keep coming back and making sure that it gets resolved until it passes the QA.
Well, thanks, Elena. And before we turn it over to Dan, I think you had a couple of more slides with information, provided that we haven't covered it already. Is there some other slide that you wanted to feature
Yeah, I would love to jump to our campaign slide. Please, if we could just fast forward to that. I'm really excited to share that, you know, taking in and building off of the original Mold Busters, which is also part of the HUD Action Plan commitment, the importance of sharing the information. What is mold? What is Nycha's process on addressing mold? And what are the helpful tips that Nycha residents can do in order to prevent mold in their homes? And so what we see right now is the branding associated with this campaign. I will tell you that I stayed away from the design process. This was all done through a working group that consisted of residents, consisted of Department of Health, council members, and our internal team, resident engagement, and so forth. And they wanted to make sure to make it approachable, make it relatable, as well as still have a serious undertone and make sure to get the communication done. We've developed a handbook that walks, it's a physical printed copy. We also have videos. We have 4 videos that walk them through. On the 4th one is residents' testimonies. And of course, what you're looking is at our website where all of this is living. So please come and visit, like it, share it. And if you have any questions or recommendations, please reach out to us.
That's excellent. I would also recommend, before we turn it over to Dan, that everybody look at video 4. If you're only going to look at one, look at video 4 and spread the word, because I think it impresses upon everyone the importance of calling the CCC as soon as possible. When you get the incipient, when you get the beginning stages of the mold, it's really vital that you call the CCC so you can start that work order process going, because the longer you delay, the bigger the mold colony grows and the greater the risk to a person's health will be. So I urge you to check out at least one of those videos, number 4, and spread the word that people should not delay. If they think they have mold, they should make the call. So if you have perhaps a minute to sum up with your presentation, what would you emphasize, Elena? Perhaps we have a technical issue. Okay, well then, why don't we just jump over and invite Dan to walk us through the material that he's prepared for tonight's event.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. This is Dan Green again. So I'm gonna give you some key updates on lead-based paint. It's not gonna be everything in the time that we have, but there's some important new information that I want to make sure everyone's aware of tonight. So we can get to the next slide so we can start right away. Okay, so this is just very quick here. It's a glossary of some key lead terms. So I'm going to be saying a few words that I want to make sure everybody is clear on what I'm saying, because I talk kind of fast sometimes. So I'm going to talk a lot about children under 6 tonight, because that's really the emphasis of lead-based paint. We got to be protecting our kids. That's they're at greatest risk of the permanent impacts of lead-based paint, and our programs have to be driven to protect them. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some changes that we're going to make tonight to make that even more strong than we've already tried. Abatement. I'm going to use the term abatement tonight. That means the permanent removal of lead-based paint. It's a long way for Nycha to get to when we're going to fully abate lead-based paint, but we have some plans that we're starting on that I think in the next year, we're going to start to see some changes on that and start to see some real progress for full abatement. Remediation is correcting the paint. So every year we're coming into many Nycha apartments, not everyone, but many Nycha apartments, to visually inspect them to make sure that there's no peeling paint. What we have to do then is correct that, and that's called remediation. Next thing I'm going to talk about is XRF. That's a word that everybody probably didn't know a few years ago, but now has probably heard more than they want. An XRF is a machine that can read lead paint while it's on the wall or on another painted component, and it can read how much lead is in that paint. So we're going to talk a little bit about XRF tonight and some important updates on that. Visual assessments I've already kind of described. Risk assessments is another type of inspection that we have to do every 2 years. At Nycha Developments, we weren't doing them for a very long time, but now under our new lead program, we're making sure that we're doing them as required every 2 years. It's a more thorough evaluation of lead in the apartments, the common areas, and even in the soil. RRP, you're going to hear me say those 3 letters. RRP is lead safe work practices. So if we're disturbing paint that's presumed or known to contain lead, we have to be following special work practices, putting up plastic sheeting, cleaning through wet methods in a HEPA vacuum, and then making sure that we're taking a dust wipe to clear that area. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the words RRP. It stands for the EPA Renovation, Repair, and Painting Rule. So with that said, we can go to the next slide. Okay, this is a slide I've shown before, and if you've ever heard me speak on lead before, you might have seen this. But basically, when we say lead paint, when an apartment has lead paint, it doesn't mean that every surface in that apartment has lead paint. Only certain components typically will have lead-based paint. And what a component is just a piece of your apartment. So a component can be a wall, a ceiling, a baseboard. Those are some common ones, obviously, but there are also a lot of our lead appears on things that you don't think about every day, but you see. One is the tub waste, which some Nycha apartments have at the bottom of the tub. The door buck, which is the surrounding frame of a door. A corner case, which is a kind of a piece of a little cornice that goes around the corner there of your apartment. Chair rails in your bathrooms, and then the lead bend, which is a pipe that you see in your bathroom, an exposed pipe. So those are some components. And so when we say lead-based paint, we could really say that only a few components might be present in the apartments, but some apartments have a lot more than others. And that's why we do XRF testing, which is our next slide here. So if we advance to the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. So similar to Elena, lead is a team effort throughout the agency. And so our teams that do most of the work on lead are Healthy Homes Lead Hazard Control, which does all of our assessments, inspections, dust wipe testing, and responses to elevated blood lead level cases. Then we have our skilled trades, our maintenance workers, who actually do the work, and they're the ones who have to follow those RRP requirements. In addition, the management side of the house has to make sure we're disclosing risks about lead, and we also have to be sending out annual surveys to find out where our kids are, because that's an important point that we've been through the monitor, been worked on some ways to do that a little bit better than we have in the past. And then we also
Excuse me, Dan, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment to ask that you please slow down a little bit for our Spanish language interpreter.
I apologize. I feel like I'm back in court when I would get stopped by the court reporter, but I apologize. I know I'm a fast talker, so I'll slow it down. So management and planning is another department in Nycha operations. And what they do is when we do an assessment and we have peeling paint, they have a team of trained painters who go and address that hazard. And then we have our oversight team. So we have compliance and EHS. And so the breakdown between compliance and EHS is that number one, EHS has a team of specially trained technicians that go out in the field and they make sure that they come out to the developments and they make sure that that the work is being done properly. So they'll do surprise inspections of work going on to make sure that they're following all the safety protocols that need to be done when you're working around lead-based paint. In addition, lead creates a lot of paperwork. So when you have a lead project, there's checklists, there's notices, and there's all sorts of stuff that we need to keep for many, many years for every single project that we do. And so compliance, what we do is we review a lot of the paperwork to make sure that it's accurate, to make sure that it's being completed. And if it's not, we document that and we make sure that we share that with the monitor, and then we work on corrective actions. But through that team, what we're trying to do is drive better lead compliance. We're not all the way there. I'm not going to misrepresent it and say we're doing a great job with lead. We have a long way to go with lead. But I can tell you that we're doing better than we were when we started this initiative, and I'm very hopeful that we're going to continue doing better with lead. And that brings us to the next slide, which is, I think, really good news. And it's really important news for everybody to understand. And this is new news. This is not old news. So in 2 weeks, New York City's lead-based paint standard is going to become the strictest lead-based paint standard in the country. It's going to become much more stringent than the federal standard. It's going to drop from 1.0 micrograms by half down to 0.5. And so what does that mean? So first of all, this came from our city council and from our mayor. This was part of a policy program that I happened to work on a couple of years ago called Lead Free NYC, where we wanted to take the lessons that we learned through some of the really bad stories that happened at Nycha and make a change to the city's lead policies and do a lot better. And so what we proposed was legislation that was passed by the city council that is going to create the strictest lead standard in the country. Now, it was so strict that when the bill passed, there was not even a piece of equipment that had been approved that could even read the lead at those levels. So we're talking really, really low levels here. The law was written in a way that said it would not go into effect until HUD approved a device that could read it at those levels, which is a common tactic in environmental regulations. You always try to push things to the limit of your technology. So the good news is that HUD last year approved a device that can read lead down to those low levels, and the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development then published a rule this summer. And so on December 1st, New York City will have the most stringent lead standard in the country. And so what does that mean to me if I'm a Nycha resident? Well, it means a couple things. First of all, it means that areas that were previously considered negative under the federal rule will now be presumed, if the child lives there, to be positive. And the reason why is because we need to protect the kids to the utmost extent possible. So what we're doing to prepare for this is we're going to make sure now that whenever there's a child under 6 in an apartment, and again, we've worked with the monitor to do a lot more work to identify kids under 6. You may see some of the posters that we put up to really encourage people to tell us. We've also created a portal where you can go online tonight and let us know if you have a kid that not only lives in your apartment, but if you have a grandkid, if you have a niece or nephew, or even a child that you might take care of for a friend that visits your apartment for 10 or more hours a week, we want to know, because we want to make sure that when we're doing work around in those apartments, we're following the lead safe work practices to the utmost possible requirements. And so this is going to protect more kids. It's going to also lead to more deeper abatements. So back, before this law was going to pass, we would only abate things if they hit that 1.0 standard, but now we're going to abate anything that gets to that 0.5 standard. So we're going to be taking lead out of our buildings permanently. It's going to be a long endeavor. It's not going to happen like before the end of the year. It's going to take many, many years. But at the end of the day, what we're going to have is a safer Nycha for generations to come, and we will be taking lead out of our buildings to the lowest extent ever. So that's a powerful thing. I know that it's a new law, but we're putting in the steps now, and I think we have the team that is going to be here to get the agency to implement it appropriately. So I'll go to the next slide, and I'm happy to answer questions about that tonight. So what does that mean? So, I know that some of you might say, okay, well, I just had my apartment tested last year. Well, what does that mean? Well, it gives you a lot of good information because it was tested at the current New York City standard and the current federal standard. And what I'm showing up right now is a pie chart of that result. So as you might know, Nycha has tested over 100,000 apartments using those XRF devices. And I want to be clear that all that testing was done at the federal standard of the 1.0. So it's not at the new standard yet. But what we saw was pretty interesting. At the federal standard, or at the 1.0 standard, 72% of the apartments that we've got results for so far, 58,000 apartments tested negative under that federal standard. And if you remember, I was talking a bit about components back in the early presentation. So what you see here is a breakdown of apartments by apartment of how many components we found in each group of apartments. So for 10,000 apartments, about 10,224, we found just one component. It's typically in the bathroom. It's typically the lead bend. In 6% of the apartments, or about 5,000, we found 2 components, and then 3 to 4 components those are about just over 10,000 apartments. Those are the apartments that we're really concerned about, because those are the apartments where there's a lot more lead components. Now, what we need to do now is do more testing. And I know that's kind of like, folks might be like, well, that's kind of like going to be intrusive, and we just did this. But I can just say, as an environmental lawyer, testing is important, and we need to continue to test it to meet the new standard. And so we will be out in January. We're not going to take a big long break here. We will be out in January, going to the child under 6 apartments to retest them at the new stringent standard. Because we want to now use that standard, and we are putting it into effect. We're getting all of our systems ready. We're giving all our notice to staff. In addition, on December 1st, any apartment, even if it's tested negative in the past, if it has a kid in it, we're going to be following those lead safe work practices to make sure that we're, again, following this most stringent standard of the law here to protect kids from lead-based paint in the hazards that it causes. So this is good news. I know it's a lot, and I know lead is always changing, but this is how change happens through laws. It happens through now getting a team in place that's ready to implement those laws. So we can go to the next slide. So I'll be very brief here, because I know that there's probably a lot of questions this evening. So how do we get a more compliant Nycha? And I could go on for a couple hours on this, but I'm just going to talk about a couple key things that we've done. That might seem a little bit boring, but it is really important because it sets the table for all the things that need to happen every single day. Number one, since 2017, we've trained almost 3,500 Nycha staff members to become certified EPA renovators, meaning that they've been actually trained on how to do all the work that I just talked about properly. So that means they know how to put up the right vent, they know how to put up the right plastic, where to put it up, how to clean it properly, how to order a dust wipe. So we've been working with them and training them and making sure that they are the ones assigned to do this work. We've also given a smaller number of staff, just over 1,200, almost 1,300 staff on-site hands-on training. And that was a little bit interrupted by the pandemic, but hopefully that'll start up again pretty soon. In addition, what we've also created is an online refresher, and we've created some pretty simple guides for staff. Because this lead stuff, it's like, if you look at the HUD book, it's about like this tall. And so what we want to do is some simple guides. What you see here is one of our, what we call quick reference guides, to give to staff so they can really understand this stuff. So if they're working in your apartment and they say, I don't really know what I should do, they can go right onto the website on their phone, pull this up and say, okay, this is what I have to do. So simple instructions, reinforcing it with staff, training, key to lead compliance. Next slide, please. So the other thing we've done is oversight. And this is a big part of our lead action plan. Is something that Dennis has been really instrumental in helping us set up. But we have a really thorough lead oversight program right now. I talked a little bit about it. But the simple equation is what leads to compliance. Doing the work correctly, doing the work right, documenting the work right, and that's going to equal compliance. And so I've already talked about EHS and compliance of what we do. But what we also do is each year we publish reports, and they're available on our website. I still have to upload on the most recent one, and I apologize for that. But we upload our reports so that you can read about how we're doing and how well we're not doing, and what areas we need to work on. Because we want to make sure that the monitor is aware, that our regulators are aware, and that you are aware. Because we don't want to misrepresent and say that we're doing so great when we still have work to do to improve things. Because that honesty is really the only way that we're going to get through this together. So that's oversight, and again, there's a lot of paper that goes in, a lot of analysis, but this is the basic equation that we need to do for all of our work, for mold and lead. So the next slide gets into some of the lead action plan. So last January, we approved what I think is a really good initial lead action plan, and it was an initial lead action plan because lead is as Dennis said, there's about 8 pages of single space requirements that we need to meet. And so what we did was come up with some plans for some of the most major ones, but there's still some areas that we need to still work on and think through for lead, because it's expensive and it's also very challenging to do, requires relocation and some really challenging things that we have to address. But what we've done so 3 of the key actions that we put in the lead action plan that we have been implementing, and some of them we're going to need to change because of that new standard that I talked about. But one of them is outreach. And so if you have a kid who, again, lives or visits your apartment for more than 10 hours a week, and they're 5 years old or younger, so a kid under 6, please tell us. Please go onto your My Nycha app, and there's actually a platform in there where you can let us know if you have a kid who either lives or visits your apartment. Disclose that information in annual recertification. And also, in about a month from now, we're going to be sending out our annual recertification for lead, window guards, and stove knobs. Usually we don't get such a good response to those. We need people to respond to those. You see the posters up in the lobby. We need to know where the kids are so that we can properly implement these programs and protect our youngest residents and visitors. So that is one of the key things, is the outreach campaign. We also have done door knocks for the past 2 years. We have sent out a team to do door knocks at our developments where we don't get responses from people, to ask them in person if they have a kid who lives or visits their apartment who's under 6 years old. Those have been really effective. But what we really like is if you respond to us, because then we don't have to come and bother you. So if you respond to our survey, which goes out every year, every landlord in New York City has to send it out, so Nycha is no different. Please respond to us so that we don't have to come and knock on your door. But if you don't, we will come and knock on your door to ask if you have a kid living there, because we really need to know where our kids are and accurately account for them. And we've done a lot of work on that. And the monitor has been really helpful in guiding us and pushing us on that. Tempo Repair is a program. So I've talked about the Tempo program in an earlier town hall, and Tempo is a program that we're doing. So I talked about those apartments that have 3 or more lead components at the 1.0 standard. So those are the apartments that we're most concerned about. And if a child lives in those apartments, we're very concerned. So what we created under the lead action plan is a special team dedicated to doing the work in those apartments. And the goal is to do that work up to the utmost safety standards, but also to do it faster. Because when you're doing construction around kids, if you let it linger for too long, like we at Nycha sometimes do, unfortunately, it's true, that's going to cause more dust, a dirty condition where the child has to be exposed to. And we don't want to do that if there's a kid in the apartment. We want more seamless repairs. And so we have a single team of all of the required trades that are dedicated to these apartments where we think the most lead is located, and where they have a child under 6, so that we can protect that child and that family so to make sure that we're doing the work properly. And that's a Tempo Repair program. We launched it May 17th, and I'm proud to say that we've done over 5,000 work orders through that team. We have a really good service level. It's getting better. We have dedicated staff, approximately 70 staff dedicated to that program. And it's going to be a program that I think we can build off of. For example, we're going to start doing more outreach to expecting families, not just where a child has been born and living, but expecting families. So if you are expecting and you live in one of these apartments, we will enroll you in this program to make sure that you're bringing your child home to a safe environment. I just had a baby this year. I know how important that is to bring a new baby into a safe, clean environment, and that's what we want to do. That's where we want to go. We're not there yet, but we are putting in place the building blocks to get to that type of program. Tempo Abatement. So Tempo Abatement is, again, Tempo. We picked the name Tempo because we want to move faster. We want to move with a better pace. And Tempo Abatement, unfortunately, has had some challenges because of that new law. So what we were going to do is we were going to abate apartments that have 1 or 2 components and a child under 6, and we were going to do it faster. But with the new law coming, we don't want to be coming back to your apartment twice and saying, oh, well, we removed some of these, but guess what? A new law passed, so now we have to remove some more. No, we want to start testing those apartments so that we can now implement that abatement program efficiently and getting all the lead out to the new standard, not just a couple components. So what we're going to be doing starting in January, first of all, I'll be speaking with Mr. Schwartz and Mr. Walsh about amending our action plan because we have to be fluid here. We can't just be sticking the muds about what we have, but we want to amend it so that we can now have a plan where we're going to test our CU6 apartments, and then we're going to start proposing abatements as those results come in. So lead, a lot of things happening. I'm sorry if that was a lot, and I'm sorry if I talked fast, but I'm happy to slow it down to answer any questions. And thank you so much for everyone's time.
Thanks, Dan. And we'll turn it back to Asha now because we do have questions and quite a few residents who want to engage in the discussion. So I'll turn it back to you now, Asha.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Dan. And thank you, Elena, for those really thorough and interesting presentations on lead and mold. One of the real reasons why we wanted to have this session was precisely so that you all could hear directly from Nycha what they say they're doing, but so that the monitor team can also hear from you what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what's working, what's not working on the ground in your developments in real time. So we wanted this session to be interactive and to have enough time to hear from as many of you as possible. And so that you can ask your questions, share your comments and your thoughts. So with that, we have a number of people who have already lined up. We'll be calling on you in the order in which you are in the chat box. If you would like to raise your hand or have a question, please so indicate in the chat and indicate if you want to ask your question directly. Then we will move you over when it's your turn from the audience panel to the speaker panel so that you can ask your question. We ask that you ask one question or make one comment at a time, and then get back in the queue if you have multiple things to add so that we could get to as many residents as possible in our remaining time. So we will go until 7:30. We have about 35 minutes for Q&A. And with that, we will take our first question. And Floretta, if you could please let us know who is on deck.
Cynthia Tibbs is first in line. Cynthia, you can unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, so my name is Cynthia Tibbs. I'm the TA president at Wasser Brownstones. As I put in the chat, I currently have a tenant who is a senior. While she's not a child, seniors are just as important. Her entire apartment is filled with mold. Management has yet to do any work in it because they claim Nycha has no money, but yet they were quick to let me know that in 2022, our development is being put into the PAP program, which will no longer fall under the monitor's problem. That happens all the time in Nycha. Management will stretch these issues out until it no longer becomes under the watch of the monitor's office. Part two, I got this on Monday saying I have the lead samples in my apartment came back as elevated lead levels. Nobody in management seems to know I got this letter. Half of my development got this letter on Monday, even though it's dated October 31st. So while I understand you stress children, you have seniors that have spent their entire lives in this development that are now with deteriorating organs, that have COPD, that have cancer, and now have lead in their apartments, have mold in their apartments, but because they are not recognized as a child that comes there, everyone's dragging their feet on getting their apartments repaired. And that's not acceptable. That needs to stop. As presidents, we sit in on these Zoom meetings unpaid all day long, listening to paid people show us slides for an hour when we could have been addressing our issues for longer than 35 minutes. Thank you.
Ms. Tibbs,
You, Ms. Tibbs.
Yep.
I'm sorry that you're experiencing this, and everybody's important, regardless of their age. I don't know how we're, and Asha, maybe you could help me on how we're gonna, whether we need to preserve people's identities, but I would like to get the information. I don't know if you want to just tell me now, but
Well,
what would be,
No,
let me
I can
suggest-
send everything in an email. I'm not doing that.
Let me
Okay,
suggest a solution here. I am going to read the Nycha monitor, that's us, that's Bart Schwartz and me, email address and the phone number, and we can preserve anonymity if you take those options. And we will ask you questions to help us understand what the situation is. So it's monitor@nychamonitor.com.
I know your email address. I've written plenty of times before. We have apartments in here that have been off the rent roll since the beginning of the year that no one has worked on, and they're all mold.
There are maybe folks, Ms. Tibbs, who don't have that information. So I'm going to take the opportunity to make sure that they know how to get in touch. And of course, the toll-free number is 844-309-6080. And we get calls and emails every day, and we respond immediately to those communications, and we take direct action with the developments and the neighborhood administrators. So I would encourage everybody, if they have any concerns about the handling of work orders or conditions in their apartments, to call us. And you can also, with respect to a mold.
Dennis, repeat the phone number, please. I'll put it in the chat.
Sure. The toll-free number is 844-309-6080. And I would going to suggest to Elena that she give the contact number for the Ombudsman call center, which takes calls from people who are not happy with the repair effort being undertaken by operations. So if you have that number, Elena, can you read it out?
Absolutely, yes. So it is 888-341-7152. I'll repeat that one more time. 888-341-7152.
And I would point out that that is an independent call center. It's run by the independent officers in the bias case, the ombudsperson, and managed by the independent data analyst. So you can call that number if you are unhappy with Nycha's response and repairs to your mold ticket.
Yeah, and they've already helped over 8,000 cases, which represent over 30,000 tickets. So they work very rigorously and put a lot of pressure on us and our team in order to get it done. And they advocate absolutely for tenants' rights and making sure that the experience is resident focused. And like I said, my team is the extension of it. We're the internal arm that works for them in order to case manage through the end. So what you would expect is once you create a ticket, once you create a ticket with OCC, and I'll just note that you should have an existing condition and an existing work order that's not resolved. That's how they'll take it, the case. Then what's going to happen is we're going to assign a resident communication associate who is going to be assigned to work on this case and periodically follow up, not only with you, but also with, of course, the property management and skilled trades. And they'll
Well, I can do all of this. Why is it not the monitor's job to contact the management office and ask for a list of all outstanding mold tickets and all open repairs and apartments that have yet to be done? How many apartments are currently off the rent roll due to mold?
Well, we actually are very vigilant in that regard. It was our investigation that exposed a similar situation at the Washington Heights Rehab, which has received a lot of publicity. And that was just before PAC conversion. So we take this very seriously. We look into it as soon as we get the information. And I can assure you that once we get the particulars of this, we will look into it. And we have a field team that can also respond. Please do let us have that information, because we do look at stuff and take it very seriously.
Okay.
Asha, our next.
Thank you so much. I think we have Miss Eldon up next.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you so much for this meeting. My initial question, I will go to in a minute, but in regard to the lead testing, it was done here at St. Mary's, and we were not notified as to the results. So I was curious as to how long that time limit is between the testing, the results, and notifying the residents. As I heard that they did receive letters for those that did have higher levels of lead. I would be curious to find out when they're going to come to St. Mary's with those results. But my main question was in regard to the mold issue. And I'm very well aware of the Ombudsman's office. I've been pushing mold busters for a long time, but this is my issue. We have roofs that are leaking. We have drainage pipes that need to be replaced in the buildings. And until that is done, water will continue to go through the buildings into apartments and hallways as such. So any mold buster coming here doing a job will probably come back another year later and continue that. Before we can even talk about removing the mold, we have to stop the process by which it develops. And that's those leaky roofs. And one particular roof in my development housed the water tank. And the water tank was busted for 15 months until I could get it replaced. So they replaced the water tank. But as the contractor said, quote unquote, walking on the roof is like walking on brownies. That is how soft the roof is. The worst apartment underneath that roof is 21E. Everybody and their mother has come to this woman's apartment. It was recently condemned by Section 8. Why it took Section 8 so long to come and examine that apartment is beyond me. But now they're trying to push for her to be transferred. But my question is, why come out and do mold removal when you know that there are issues with the roofs that needs to be addressed? The roofs and those drainage pipes that run through the building. We have 3 on the front, 3 on the back of each building, all 6 buildings, and every building has leaks from the roof that go into apartments. Thank you.
Really good points. Thank you so much. Dennis, who's going to?
I just have one question for Ms. Eldon. Did you say which development this is in which particular building?
This is St. Mary's Park Housing.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you did say that.
Yeah, and we have 34% seniors here. I'm a disabled senior myself. And I got a neighbor that just came down 2 hours ago. There's water coming through the ceiling of her bathroom. Where it's coming from, she has no clue. But they say, oh, it's a 24-hour ticket. ESU will come through. But what is she supposed to do in the meantime? She's mopping water up again. This is not a single incident for her. This is a repeat situation. And she's not unlike many. I even have one in another building. They keep putting notices on her door to come and inspect it for the mold. She's had like 8 different pairs of people come in her apartment in the last month. And the problem is that that leak from the roof is going through the building into the apartments.
Elena, could you look into the status of the relocation effort for this resident? That sounds awful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'll look into what the plan is with the replacing with the roofs, because you're absolutely right. Unless you address the root cause, you're just going to have a reoccurrence. And we need to get to the bottom line of what's going on, what's the plan, and you know, whether it's something that is in the capital's pipeline to part of the 5-year plan. So I don't know if you already know this. I don't know, but we'll investigate.
Listen, I've read the capital plan, and I've also seen the capital budget, how they're sitting on $2 billion, okay? How they're sitting on money that has not been used. So talk to me about capital plans, okay? Because I've seen the budget. Most people don't read that 200 some odd page report. I did. So I know how much money Nycha gets. I know how much they spend on operating costs. I know how much they spend on capital projects. So give me some answers. In fact, give me some contractors and come and replace those roofs and get those drainage pipes done. And the person that's in that bad apartment that was underneath that water tank, she has lupus and she's suffering. If you open her door, the smell of the mold comes out. If you step into her apartment, the water comes up from underneath her tiles. Even the window frames have shifted from the saturation of water from the roof. It's a fiasco. It should be criminal that Nycha is doing this, and they give us this crap about capital funding. And you're sitting on $2 billion?
We need to
Yeah.
relocate the tenant, obviously immediately, because that sounds like unsafe conditions. I will make sure to follow up first thing in the morning on what's the status on the immediate need of relocation, but we also will follow up on what working towards what's the plan, right? Because unless we fix the roof, when are we going to do it? And so we'll look into that. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to work closely with you on this as we go through the conversation.
I'll put my
I'd be
phone
sure
number.
if there's anybody else
Thank
that
you.
needs to be relocated, that would find that out.
Yeah,
There's a
please
few.
let us know about these egregious conditions. And it's so important, the point you made too about the root causes. Thank you so much for your comments. Floretta, I know we have another question that's been patiently waiting, please.
And this question is pretty much what a lot of the folks in chat are asking. So we'll just, hopefully it's a quick response, and you've touched on it a little bit, but it's basically from Rena Munchin, and she's also a resident association president. She's asking, it's good that Nycha is checking apartments where small children are in the home, but what is the process? Why not check all the apartments, and how does that work?
So a good point. And I emphasize the young kids because that is really important from a lead health perspective. Is it has such a dramatic impact on young children, and that's why I emphasize that. But it's key that everyone knows that first of all, we tested. I have a plan for 134,000 apartments. So not just where kids are located, every Nycha apartment that has not been previously tested, that's constructed prior to 1978, was going to get an XRF test. So every apartment. And then under the HUD lead safe housing rule, the city rules are very focused on children, but the HUD rule protects anybody when there's presumed or known lead in their apartment. So we have to inspect all the apartments that have known or presumed lead every year. And that's about, it's approximately 40,000 apartments, give or take. It goes up and down because as people move out, we do an abatement and we remove the lead, but that applies to everyone. And certainly, the emphasis for lead is on a lot of our programs are on kids, finding out where they are, making sure that we're doing lead safe work practices around everyone, not just kids, but everyone. No matter if you're 6 or 60, we should be doing lead safe work practices around you. But I also want to emphasize that mold is another area that we really want to make sure seniors are treated appropriately. We hear cases way too much about seniors living in conditions where there's active mold or leaks. And those cases are extremely concerning because the mold can have a serious impact on that person's health. And we want to work with them through Elena's team, but also by overseeing the work to make sure that it's done appropriately. But also if they need to be relocated, we have created a relocation unit now that offers services, social services, and also helps coordinate either a temporary move to a hotel for a few days to let the work get done, or to another Nycha hospitality apartment to let the work get done, or a permanent transfer if that's necessary, if the unit's in a condition such as the one that we just heard about. So I just want to I apologize for emphasizing kids. I think it's important to emphasize kids when we're talking about lead, but it's not just for kids, it's for everyone. Our testing programs are for everyone, our inspection programs are for everyone, and our work practices programs are for everyone.
Asha, could I suggest that we maximize our time by asking everybody to state succinctly within a minute what their question or comment is, and that we can respond in the same rapid time fashion.
Yes, thank you. And we also are emphasizing that you could keep it to one question, although I know you might have many. The next question, I think Floretta is going to raise the question that came into the chat.
That was the question, but yes, something else came in. It's well said. I'm actually gonna, Asha, if it's okay with you, I'm just gonna go to Lisa Kinner.
Perfect.
So she can ask her question, and then after her will be Tyree Standback. Thank you. Go ahead.
Great. Ms. Kenner, please.
Good evening. You can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've been mopping up water since last Friday in the association office. However, they cut off the water tonight. I had notified CCC on last Friday and Saturday. Therefore, I contacted the management office on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I was told they found a leak in the wall in the old community center, which became Job Plus. So
Ms.
they say
Kenner, pause for a moment. Let us know which development you're in.
excuse me, Van Dyke One houses. They say they found it in the old community center, which was used by Job Plus, Brownsville Job Plus. But they're waiting for the plumbers, and the plumbers wasn't gonna be here until Friday. Therefore, if I didn't say something, I'd be flooded down here. I've been wiping up water since 4:30. It is now 7:15. So then they finally came, and they had to cut the water off. But common sense would told you to cut the water off earlier this morning. I came in here, water was met me at the door. So now 28 apartments affected on the G and H line, because if they kept the water on, I've been flooded down here. So my thing is, everybody went home. Now I have to clean up the water, but my thing is that why wait till Friday to get the plumbers if you already knew about the problem? Now I know the caretakers went up there and was wiping up water, right? It took 3 caretakers to go up there and wipe up their water. So when they went in there this morning, they seen all the water on the floor. So all the water came down from the ceiling into the office. They didn't wipe up the water until I said something. So, you know, they got to do better than this. It got to be, because now I'm sitting in here, I can smell the smell coming out the closet, and now the whole pipe is brown. So after I finish talking with y'all after this, I'm out of here.
Thank you for bringing that urgent issue to our attention. And it also highlights the initial point about the pervasive water conditions causing mold problems in buildings, and that needs to really get addressed. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
Floretta, who's next?
Tyree Stand.
Good evening.
There you are.
Good evening. This is Tyree, the resident leader at Lafayette Gardens. My concern, Mr. Walsh, is what can we do for more accountability? I mean, this presentation tonight was all nice and good, but I didn't find anything in it truthful, believable, or actionable. Everything is like these people have never been in a development before. They just get numbers pushed to them out of a computer onto their desk. But the actual on the ground that we live as resident leaders, I have never, ever had anyone follow or been able to follow that schedule, the 4 days for this and 7 days for that. My experience is 8 months. We had a whole entire line, the H line lost their gas 8 months ago, and they had to come in and break into the wall. While breaking into the wall, they discovered the mold and the lead and abatement, to the point that they had to move a woman from the top floor down to the bottom floor. They finally, 8 months later, moved her back up to the 11th floor. And guess what? We have to move her downstairs again, because like my colleague said, water coming through the roof again has caused the mold and lead to come right back. So I'm just amazed that they can push all these numbers and no one challenged them if the numbers are correct, the actual living proof that we as resident leaders live every day is contradictory to what they're saying. They can say so many apartments, but I can tell you that the same people have come here and taken the same pictures 4 and 5 times, and we still don't have anybody coming to answer the abatement. I have called specifically to Miss Elena's office on behalf of residents to say that there are young children in the house and there are problems. Why is it taking months to respond? And I'll be darned if it didn't take another month, but somebody finally came out a month later. But I'm saying the reality is it's not what they are perpetrating and what the picture they're drawing on paper. That's my concern. What can we do to have more accuracy? As you hear tonight, all of my colleagues, all of the other resident leaders are saying what they are promoting and what they are pumping as numbers is not true.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What I'd like to do is have someone reach out to you so that we can get the particular information, because to your first point, the accountability is an imperative, but it is a challenge. And so we need facts. We will examine the work orders. If we can get the apartment numbers and the locations at Lafayette Gardens, we will look into it and we will identify the people who were involved in those work orders.
And can someone speak to the discrepancy in the timing? You know, there is a certain amount of time that they're supposed to get flipped. And as residents can attest, it takes much, much longer. What's getting done about that?
So on the timing,
Yeah,
I just want to be clear, like we're out of compliance with the requirement. So the requirement is for complex repairs, 15 days, and we've never been able to achieve it. So Mr. Standback, I think you and I met actually during the pandemic, if you recall. I came out, we checked out the vendor that was doing some work out at Lafayette, and we walked the property, but we've never been able to meet the 15 days. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Number one, we need more staff to do the work. You know, there's a lot of work that we need to do. And it's a very large volume of work. And that's the compliance department's opinion. So that's my personal opinion. Number two, we need to get better at doing the work. We need to be closing out work orders appropriately. I agree with you on the accuracy. I work with Mr. Walsh. He audits work orders. We interview staff. If they don't do, we just did one at Lafayette Gardens where they don't enter the proper information, where they leave residents in bad condition. So I share that goal. They need to be accurate 100%. And we've brought cases against people who are not doing that. Because unfortunately, we have a small group of people who think it's okay to enter improper information in work orders. But on the 15 days, what we really need to do is the capital repairs that was discussed, because that's going to address the root causes. And we need to make some improvements in how we respond to things to be more efficient. And we probably need to add more staff and more contractors to be able to address some of these concerns in a more timely fashion.
Thank you. And thank you so much for those important points. Floretta, who's next, please?
Next, Crystal Glover. Crystal, you can unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for this meeting.
Good evening.
I know this is a mold and lead meeting. Mr. Daniel Green, I want to make a comment and then I'd like to ask a question. My name is Crystal Glover. Did I say that? Did I say my name? Anyway, Mr. Green, we met you at a town hall at Washington. I think I spoke to you when I called compliance, when you call CCC. I think I had spoken to you. There's a person there that says he's always there. He's the only one that we speak to when we call. I thought it was you, but anyway. So I had put a ticket in, but anyway, this compliance department, in our development, I know in my building, we have, the water was closed down in our building June 8th for 8 hours. And ever since that day, the water pressure in our bathroom, preferably the shower, is so slow. You can barely rinse the soap off of you. Okay, that's June 8th. Okay, my tenant association had a town hall, I believe that was late September. You were in attendance. You took a picture of a petition I put together. I actually went through my building. No, I am not on the board, but I do what I have to do because I gotta live there. So I went floor to floor because I thought maybe I was the only one in the building with this problem. And I actually got over 50 signatures of people who have the same problem. You took a picture of the petition. You said you'd get back to me. I'm not going to call you out and say what you didn't do because you know what you didn't do. You didn't call me yet. But anyway, I'm sorry. And
It's
so,
fair. No, you're right. You're right.
okay.
I didn't. I
So the
didn't call you. You're
problem
right.
is still existed. My TA has gotten back to me and said she thanked me for actually putting the petition together, and that things looked like they were looking up and stuff like that. But this is a disgrace. You can literally, you don't have enough water to rinse your hole. Okay, I'm just going to put it clear. Someone can say, well, fill up a bucket from the kitchen, fill up a bucket and take it to, no. My son and me, my son works very hard and our rent is very high. And showering is like therapy for me. So now I can't shower. So this is a mold and lead workshop. But since you're on the panel, Mr. Daniel, I'm going to address you with that. Hopefully you'll get back to me through my tenant association press, etc. Last point I want to make. This thing with this lead business. I remember when Shayola Olatoya, Miss Shayola, was the chairwoman. She had them going out and testing the apartments of people with children, whatever age that was to whatever age it was. I put it that way because I don't have children in my apartment and children don't come here. But the requirement was that only certain apartments with children were being tested. Then when she got caught with the bag, for lack of a better way of saying it, and resigned, now they checked all the apartments. Okay, so you come into my apartment with 3 people, 3 strangers pop up, and they got all these equipment and all this kind of thing. You're looking like the feds or something. And they check every corner in the apartment only to find there's no lead here. So you inconvenience me coming and there's no lead here. Why didn't they just stick to the plan and check those apartments who were mandated instead of inconveniencing the whole development, checking all of us? Now you're saying you want to go back and check everybody. This is what you said to me. You want to go back and check all of the apartments. No, all apartments still need to be checked. There's no kids coming to my apartment. There's no babies here. So my apartment doesn't need to be checked again. It was checked and it was determined there was no lead. And on that note, thank you.
I want to apologize. I do want to apologize. I very much remember meeting with you in late September. I'll reach out to you tomorrow, and I'll reach out to the neighborhood administrator to get that issue addressed. I do remember talking to you, so I want to publicly apologize for not getting back to you.
You don't have my number, Mr. Green. How are you going to reach out?
I think
You can do it through my TA. You can do it through my TA.
I'll get it through your TA. I'll get it through your TA tomorrow.
Yeah, get it through my president, and then she can get back to me. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I apologize. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you for that. We do want to, we are out of our technical allotted time, but because there's so many burning questions, we are going to go a little bit longer. For those who are able to stay, please stay on. This is a rare opportunity to have both the monitor team and the chief compliance officer at Nycha and the head of mold. So we have a lot of important issues, but we do want to stay focused on lead and mold issues and concerns specifically. And if you have issues with egregious situations in either your apartment or apartments of your constituents, please just make sure you email us directly as opposed to using our last little bit of time, because we want to make sure we can address those very egregious issues directly and make sure we have all of the contact information. I think we have Ms. Robertson next.
We actually have Karen Caldwell next.
Oh, okay.
And then Ms. Robertson.
Okay, Ms. Caldwell.
Karen, if you can unmute and introduce yourself. Here you are.
Okay, my name
Great,
is,
we can hear you now.
can you hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
my name is Louise Green. I'm the Vice President of TA. The reason why I asked the question, about the 6 boilers, we was in a meeting Tuesday with a supposedly project that they're doing with Tilden and Pink, and they were saying that we were only getting 2 boilers. And my question was, I thought we was allocated for 6 boilers, and the work was supposed to be starting in 2022, as of February.
Okay, thank you for raising the boiler issue. We do have our specialist on heat. So we'll have him speak at the end of the meeting if we have any time. We're gonna also make a note to make sure.
Asha, can you hear me?
Yes.
So Ms. Caldwell, what development are you in?
Okay, it's not Miss Caldwell speaking, it's Louise Green, Pink Houses, who's asking the question.
Oh, Pink Houses?
Right, Vice President of the Tenant Association, Louise Green. I'm asking the question.
Okay. If you can provide not publicly, but if you can provide your contact information, I'll find out what's going on at Pink Houses and get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll put in the chat.
Yeah.
Or not the chat, if you could write to the monitor's number if you don't put it out publicly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan. Dan is the head of our heat team. Okay, Ms. Robertson, thank you for your patience. Please unmute and proceed.
Hi, good evening. My name is Miriam Robertson. I'm the TA president of Glenmore Plaza. And I realize it's a mold and lead issue. But the one thing I want to concern about is that here at Glenmore Plaza, we have so many leaks in the development. Is unbelievable. We're currently, I'm really at a loss for words. I'm going to just take two issues right now. One, there's one of the buildings, there's the C line has been waiting for a plumber for almost 2 months now. Not only did they waiting for a plumber, when you guys realize what is going on in developments, I'm not quite understanding why it takes you so long to do what needs to be fixed. You do understand, because you've been landlords for more than 80 years now, that plumbing is only guaranteed for 50 years. Most of these developments have been up for maybe almost 80, 70 years. So when you do not fix the problem, when you don't fix leaks in a timely manner, you create a mold issue. You can smell the wetness. You don't send the plumbers out on the time to do, you do a patch job. And I know this is not the place to be, but I'm so frustrated right now. I'm really having to control myself because I'm just that angry. In my apartment alone, I put in a ticket 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. For the tub in my bathroom, it's been running like you turn off the faucet, it's running like you haven't turned off the faucet. I call every day. Oh, we're waiting for the planning department to send a plumber. I can understand 48 hours. I can even understand 72 hours. But 3 weeks, I can't understand that. Then you're sitting here talking about mold. Then you want to, when I close, not only the water running, it's hot water. So if I close the bathroom door, because I don't want to hear the water running, that means the moisture in the bathroom is building up. So now I'm afraid that no, this mold going to probably come into the bathroom because no one has come to fix it. Oh, no, let me rephrase that. They finally sent the plumber yesterday who said to me that, oh, we can't do the job because we can't shut down a line. We have to shut the whole building down. What was the point of you coming out to fix an issue if you can't put a sign up, let the other tenants know that there's work being done in the building so that we have to shut the line? You're not gonna have water for X amount of hours. On top of the fact, he said, oh, the valve was broke. So when you talk about mold being in buildings, when you have not the decency to send plumbers in a timely fashion, not less than 72 hours at the very least, then you want to know why there's mold in the buildings? or why
Really yeah.
when you come into your building, there's leaks in the building. You don't even, you have to have the capacity. This is a capital thing. This is capital funding. You know, you have 300 developments. You know that each development has been built at a certain time. You know that in about 10 to 20 years, we need to make sure that the pipes are being fixed. We need to change out the entire line. You don't push it off into another person to take care of it. And then those people who's being pushed off into another program, rattle pack, whatever it is, you don't even know if you're gonna be able to stay there because now your rent, and I'm not saying that some people are not paying high rents now under Nycha, but you're gonna pay more rent under Rad and Pack. And you may be put out on the street. Did anybody ever, yes, it's about numbers, but it's also about good landlordship.
Right, exactly.
If you are in the process of being a landlord, there are things that you must do. I'm quite sure that most of you guys live in homes. You do not wait until the plumbing is 10 years old. You have someone come in a timely fashion and you make the repairs in a timely fashion. That's
Right.
what you mean maintain things.
And Ms. Robertson, I've been out to
Thank
Glenmore frequently over the past couple months, and I am aware of the issues out there, and I've dealt with similar issues out there with that staff. If you could send me your information, I work with them, and I'd like to try to address that tomorrow, because I've seen similar issues at other apartments in the common areas in Glenmore Plaza. So I'm happy to try to help you with that tomorrow with the staff there and with the planning unit in Brooklyn.
I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'm going to put my contact information for everyone in the chat so they can reach out to me.
Thank you, Dan, for getting on top of this. Floretta, who's next, please?
I wanted to get this question in, Asha, that you mentioned earlier. It's from Daisy Nunez, and she's asking how or where can constituents ask to get these roof fans installed? And if that could be added to the chat, that would be great. I know that we're pressed for time. That was one of the questions. And
okay, thank you.
I think we're good. There are no more questions. No one else is lined up in the queue.
Okay, can you please answer someone the question about how residents can ask about the roof fans?
Maybe Elena can touch on that. If residents have concerns about the roof fans. Elena, can you hear us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed. What is the concern about roof
If a
fans?
resident has a concern about the functionality of a roof fan, what should they do?
Or can they're asking like to get these roof fans installed. What should they?
Yeah, well, so we have a proactive effort. I would love to get the details so that way we could find out where you are on the schedule. As Mr. Walsh have mentioned, Asbestos did throw a curveball. So we need to figure out, where you are in the schedule and what's the status of the building, whether it is positive with asbestos or not, and when the schedule will be. Can you share this information through either monitors?
What development are we talking about?
What would help me is
Loretta, which development is it?
Well, Ms. Nunez is a government official, so she's probably speaking on behalf of her constituents. I'll find out what district she's from, but I think her question is how do you go about
the general matter? Okay,
yeah,
great,
the fans
thank you.
installed.
So I think now we have concluded all of the questions we wanted to get to in the chat. Thank you so much for all of the very good questions and points. I think the biggest thing too is it's a health and safety issue for everyone involved. So mold and lead has to get addressed as soon as possible. So thank you all for raising these important questions. Thank you to the Nycha panelists for joining us this evening. And although we're over time, I wanted to just highlight all of the many ways you can contact the Federal Monitor, the Nycha Customer Contact Center, CCC, the Nycha Compliance Department. You dial the CCC number and then there's option 7. the Independent Ombudsman Call Center for mold issues, the Omar Mold Response Unit. So please, please make sure that you and your constituents know to elevate these serious concerns, because as a monitor team, we're also looking to see what they're doing to remediate these situations. So thank you all for your time and attention this evening. There's one other thing for those who have time to stay on, but we do have the head of our heat monitor team, and with the heat season approaching and cold upon us, I just wanted to give them a few minutes before we formally close. Dan Brunel, please.
Yeah, thanks, Asha. No, just real quick. And I know this is obviously tough questions, tough circumstances with regard to leaks, mold, and lead paint. But the weather now is cold, and it's going to be cold at least through next week. And of course, it'll be pretty cold for the next 3 to 4 months. And so, and we've been telling people this, you know, if you think you're not getting any heat, and of course, the best way to tell in your apartment is to actually touch the radiators and touch the risers. And if they're cold and it's cold out so that you should be getting heat, you want to make sure that, you know, your first step is to call the CCC and make the complaint, because without that complaint, which will then generate a work order, there's no chance that anything is going to happen. And then to the extent that the monitor team can be helpful, if you feel that you're not getting the proper attention from Nycha, don't hesitate to give us a call, and we'll do what we can to look into things so that we can try to get things rectified. But that's the key thing. As I said, if you think it's fine to contact anybody else if you think that's appropriate, whether it's an elected official or anybody. But the point is, the very first thing, you've got to contact the CCC and make your complaint, because that will create, you know, the official record within Nycha and give them the opportunity to hopefully respond and to do what they can to correct the situation. So that's all I really wanted to say, Asha.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining us. As always, please know that even though we're holding this town hall, you can reach out to the monitor team at any time. We want to hear from you. You really are the eyes and ears on the ground. And so we want to know if all of these great sounding plans, you know, what's really happening in real life. So thank you for being in touch with us. Please continue to join in for our scheduled events. Please check your emails. We email out invitations, and please check the monitor website for future events. Thank you so much. Have a great and safe evening.
Everybody, have a good night.